right, guys, welcome to this mini masterclass on how to develop a personal mission statement. We've talked about in module 3 or 2, beginning with the end in mind. The highest version of capturing what it means to begin with the end in mind is to develop a written personal constitution or a written personal mission statement. And so in the past, we haven't had a formal process for doing this, but as we were diving into more of Covey's work, the company had developed a document called How to Develop a Personal Mission Statement. So I thought it'd be cool to kind of adapt that to our processes here and rework a little bit of it so that we can actually use it and be very productive in developing a personal mission statement. Okay, so anyone can use this beginning with the end in mind. This is that principle in action. So in the most effective way for your personal life, it is the major step that puts the idea of leading yourself to pen and paper, okay? I love this quote that goes, "It's not real unless it's written." And that is the first step of making something real. As Jordan Peterson points out, writing is a form of thinking. It's one of the more tangible forms of thinking. So as you start to write out and work through developing a personal mission statement, this is the thing that brings the most synergy to all aspects of your life and allows you to live your highest and best life. Here is your guide to developing a personal mission statement, your personal written constitution for your life. Covey uses the analogy of an airplane. Think about this for a second. A plane is off course. Statistically speaking, 80 to 90% of the time, it is off course from its flight plan. That is fascinating because the flight plan is mapped out from point A to point B perfectly. So how does this relate to beginning with the end in mind? Well, the destination, that's the vision, that's the sense of the future. The flight plan, that's the values. Those are the governing principles that you will abide by that will get you to where you want to go, that you can use to course correct. The main concept here is all things are created twice. So this is the idea underlying, obviously, beginning with the end in mind. Here's something to think about, though, carefully. What is the opposite of beginning with the end in mind? The antithesis of a mission statement is the opposite of beginning with the end in mind. It's beginning with no end in mind, right? No intellectual creation, no forethought, no envisioning of the future. In other words, it means to let life just happen to us. In a sense, someone else has done the creation of your mission statement for you, and unaware, you're simply living out the script that has been given to you. That's what it's like. Imagine beginning with no end in mind. You wouldn't ever say to someone, "Hey, I really want you to learn the principle of wandering aimlessly about and having no vision for your future." That's obviously ridiculous. What a mission statement does is it gives us hope. And you could argue that because of the sense of purpose and meaning that a mission statement gives us, the byproduct being hope, it infuses us with a sense of purpose and duty to things that are much greater than ourselves. So beginning with the end in mind, this is the most basic practice of all creation. It's inevitable. If you look around you, everything is a result of having begun with the end in mind. So the real imperative here is we either take responsibility for the first creation of our lives, or someone or something else will. We either harness it for our good, or we break ourselves against this principle. Every aspect of your life is a byproduct of a first creation, whether you proactively choose it or not. So let's now talk about meaning and purpose. What are some more results of having a personal mission statement? Not only does it bring hope, but in conjunction with that, as we mentioned, it brings a sense of meaning. And think back to the Viktor Frankl story for a second. Frankl became intrigued with the difference between survivors of the death camps during World War II. He felt a sense of meaning and purpose in understanding the difference between survivors and between those who perished in the death camps. Now, there's some non-determining factors here. Try to guess what you think the difference was between the survivors and those who perished or died in the death camps. Physical health, survival skills, intelligence. It wasn't any of those things. In fact, in Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl actually points out that he noticed the more delicate and emotional or sensitive someone was, the higher likelihood they actually had to survive. He noticed that those people survived on average more than those who were more physically built or had survival skills or a higher intelligence. It was those who had the capability of going inward, and that really helped them survive the atrocities, the horrors of the death camps. So the point here being is like, it didn't matter how big the person was or muscular or strong. It didn't matter the survival skills that they had, how prepared they were. All of these things were non-determining factors of whether someone lived or died in the death camps. Rich Diviney, he says that both in evolution and on the SEAL teams, we see that it does not matter how strong you are. Strength is not an advantage. Adaptability, flexibility is an advantage. The ability to submit and bend to your circumstances. So those were all non-determining factors. But what were the determining factors of the survivors? This is where this gets really interesting. Frankl noticed that the survivors had developed the capacity to envision something beyond their current circumstance. So they had a sense of the future. They had a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning, a feeling that some important work of theirs was yet to be done, and that they were the creators of that future work, the inventors of it. He posed this question. We had to realize that it was life that was asking us what our purpose was. What contribution will I make? What is my purpose? And that was a question we had to decide on. To illustrate this point, Frankl describes that he himself, having a sense of the future, would imagine himself giving lectures to his students, teaching them of the lessons that he learned in the death camps. So the sense of the future is more powerful than the pull of the past. That's one of Covey's kind of hallmark quotes. Past traumas, past injuries, past failures, past baggage, past who you were, past circumstances, or even the current ones. A sense of the future is more strong and more powerful than all of those things. Mandela's story is also a very powerful example of how beginning with the end in mind, acting now, beginning now, taking your first steps with the end in mind of what life can and should and could be at its highest level, that clear vision and the values that will get you there. It's a prime example of how those things can have a powerful impact on a person's ability to persevere and the resilience that they gain in the face of adversity through that sense of purpose and vision for the future. The personal mission statement, as we've alluded to, focuses on two things. First, vision, and second, values. So the contents of your mission statement should meaningfully encompass these two aspects. Vision, again, it's a sense of who you are deep down. It's not just what life can be, but as a byproduct of who you are deep down at your core, and what you could become, that you're not only willing to accept as the center governing laws for your life, but that you're willing to dedicate your life to in pursuit of mastering yourself against those values for the outcomes you'll passionately pursue. So what form does the personal mission statement take? Anything that will psychologically imprint on your brain a creed, a constitution, a governing body of work. Recently, I feel inspired to start kind of drawing. I used to draw when I was younger. And as I was going through the research for this little mini module on how to develop a personal mission statement, Covey says that some people will develop an image or images that represent their sense of the future, the purpose of their life, their mission, and the values that will get them there. It's important to understand as well that as you're developing your mission statement, you should try to incorporate as many senses as possible in order to really connect to that future vision. Go back and watch the videos on visualization and affirmation if you want to understand more about how the mind works. And so the highest and best use of your imagination is developing a personal mission statement that encapsulates your sense of the future and using your conscience to determine the values, how you need to align your life to the correct principles so that it will get you there. So again, you want to incorporate as many senses as possible in order to make that as vivid as possible. So why write? There's a very good argument that writing is the most optimal way to do this. But again, as long as you can incorporate as many senses as possible and really think through everything, that's what's important. So writing gives you this crystallization of thought and distinction of ideas. There's always thoughts rolling around in our head. In fact, we have 80 to 90,000 individual thoughts per day that we have to sort through, and that, you know, many of which never actually make it into reality vocally or in a written way or in our actions. And so writing crystallizes those thoughts. It starts to make those thoughts real. As we've discussed previously, words form the basis of our created and experienced reality. And so it really is important to use writing as a tool to think and to solidify how you feel about your vision for the future and the values that will get you there. Let's talk about the anatomy of a mission statement. The way you could think of this is when you write out your mission statement, use this as a guiding set of principles to write it. But when you write out your mission statement, the anatomy, the criteria, these are kind of like boxes that you could check to say, okay, if my mission statement is good, it should have these 4 things. In other words, what are the guidelines or the main criteria that the mission statement needs to meet in order to be optimal? It would be most impactful, most meaningful, most permeating, most behavior and attitude determining. In other words, it needs to contain attributes that are in line with 4 things in order to really bring it to life. That it should be timeless. So what does that mean? Timelessness. This is a characteristic that your mission statement needs to have. And as you write it, you need to write it as if it will never change. Covey says that it will change, but you need to write it as if it will never change. You really start to think deeply about the governing principles and ideas that will get you what you truly want at the end in your life. You should write it as if it won't, much like the Constitution. So that's the first principle of the mission statement. It's timeless. This isn't a set of goals because goals are situational and they vary across many dimensions of your life. These are rules that permeate everything. They bleed and circulate through the body or life as a whole, providing the framework that makes our amazing mentor and the CEO of the company, Jason Walton's quote, optimally true on paper. How you do anything is how you do everything. It's the thing that starts to unify all aspects of your life so that you're living a life of integrity, integral. A key part of the anatomy of your mission statement, the box that you should be able to check to make sure that it's good when it's all said and done, is that it deals with the identity of your life, your roles, and your goals in your life. So the main titles that you care about. This is a description of your identity, main titles, the essence of the most important roles that you have in your life. We just said that the mission statement allows us to have congruency or to become a whole person, as Covey's son would say. But in order to do that, you have to understand which aspects of your life are actually the most important. What are the roles that matter most? The things that you'll actually care about. It's not just inventing an identity for yourself. It's digging down to the deep core identity of who you are as a person and what makes you uniquely human and able to go create a vision for your future that does not currently exist yet. This also reminds you of where you came from and then how to access the strength that you need for the most important and relevant decisions in your life, because they would become even more important and even more relevant once you've developed a personal mission statement that will infuse you with the sense of purpose you need. The last box that you need to check off as a point of criteria, number 4, is it incorporates all the dimensions of our human nature into it, okay? So it should touch on and incorporate the 4 dimensions of human nature, which are body. It's best to actually combine physical with the economic part of our life, the necessary stuff for survival. So we need physical health in order to survive, to live, to thrive. We need economic health in order to have the energy to get beyond ourselves and actually serve and contribute. The next part of the human dimension, once we get beyond the physical and the economic, is the heart, relationships. So this is the social and emotional lives that we have. Our emotional well-being, it's viewed through the lens of the connection and interaction with others. The next aspect of our human nature is the mind, okay? I think it's interesting that heart comes before mind in this hierarchy. So the mind is the mental aspects of our life, the learning, the growing, the psychological undertakings, and understanding of wisdom, the psychological pursuits. It's the understanding, the wisdom, the ability to make decisions based on a guidance system and formulate our opinions through mental and psychological means.